Hello, New Hope family. Welcome to the Grow Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Struns, and I'm thrilled to have Pastor Aaron with me today. We're dedicated to helping you take your next step in your relationship with Jesus. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome back, New Hope family. This is episode 183.
It is, yes.
And this is the Grow Podcast.
Yep.
And we are switching things up. I am hosting.
Yes.
And you are providing some insight into the incredible message from yesterday. But before we get into the message, we have to talk through so Student Takeover Sunday.
Oh, yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah, and I don't know if we've talked about it officially on here, but several months ago you stepped into a part-time role here at the church as our student ministries director.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have a full-time job. You're the regional director for Youth for Christ.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yep.
And we had kind of been doing some visioning on what student ministry should be.
Yeah.
And it felt like God just connected lots of dots, and then you came on staff part-time.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to talk here in a moment about where God's taking our student ministry. But I think this would be an appropriate time for us to kind of talk about some cool things that happened today. Yes. You got slow clapped as you walked into the office.
Yeah.
So you were ordained with an organization several years back, right?
Correct. Yes.
And have been going through the process of transferring ordination. And today you got a letter that said what?
Today I got the official letter. It says I'm being recognized as a Reverend in the Wesleyan Church.
An ordained minister in the Wesleyan.
An ordained minister. And that's, pending a few things, another year-long process of what happens now.
Yeah.
Which might include some classes and things. But basically, yeah, I got the first thumbs up officially for that transfer, which does feel good because you do put a lot of work into that education and those things, and you don't want them to be overlooked, I guess.
Yeah. So I never doubted it, and I'll explain why here in a second, where I'm going with this. Never doubted that you were ordained or that you had that. I want to make sure with the team that when we give someone the title of pastor, that it's more than just a word, right? And at the end of the day, I don't want to put too much weight on it, but I want it to mean something because there's so much work that goes into it. Yeah. Right? Like the classes and all that stuff. And so that today then transitions you from student ministry director to our student ministry pastor. That's a cool thing. That's a cool thing. Yeah. That's
and
we hadn't really talked about that. But that's what happens now. Yeah. Nothing else changes. You're still doing the same job. There is not a pay increase. No. I should let you know. But what a cool thing that we got this morning, and just super excited about.
Yeah, that's actually pretty special now that you say it the way that you just did. Mm-hmm. Like the slow clap made me totally uncomfortable. I didn't know what was happening. or
you were very confused.
I was very confused. I didn't know if it had to do with, we made it through the first sermon and nobody failed or
timing on our part. Yes, I think that would be a okay. Sorry about that.
No, and then but it was really cool to just read the email and I appreciate the district's work on that too, helping me get all the things together. And when you're going back 18 years, it was awesome. And that's just it's a big day, really. Yeah, it is a big day.
So, Pastor Adam, the question I have then is when we talk about student ministry in general, in a couple minutes or less, what is God doing in our student ministry?
Well, I think the biggest thing that always stood out to me, and I think this is one thing I went to with, there are a lot of young people that are leader ready in the student ministry. When I go through the door and I'm looking at 30, 40 kids that are ready to lead right now, that's a basis for a very large ministry. And so you got to jump right into the discipleship with them. And I think the biggest thing, that's the biggest piece, that we have 30 kids or a few more that are already in the space where they can share faith with their friends, lead their friends to faith, and bring them into the local church. I don't think that that's common. Mm-hmm. And so when I go and evaluate that and you and I have a conversation, I think right away we got to get these kids to see what it means to be a part of God's kingdom and why they're on this mission. And that every Christian, this is the phrase I've been using with them, if you're a Christian, you're on mission. Because they are equipped and ready. They just haven't been sent. And so in the next few weeks, as we finish up this first series and we jump into the next one, it's about sending them. Mm-hmm. And I think that's been the biggest like moment for me when I start getting to know the kids. It's like, whoa, this whole group here, they're ready to go do something big. And that made me passionate about it. I already wanted to help and serve and volunteer and be a part of the team, but there's a lot at hand. And the equipping of those students and the sending those students over the next 4 to 5 years is going to be really important. These are young people, and this is genuine. These are young people that will go into the mission field. These are young people that will go and be ministers and leaders and launch ministries and do things, because you don't find 12-year-olds that are open and ready to share the gospel with their friends. Mm-hmm. And we don't only have one, we have 10. Mm-hmm. And so like they're just getting started with student ministry and the impact they can have. We have one conversation and 2 middle school young men want to launch a Bible study at their school. Like they're ready to be sent. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the big thing. Mm-hmm. That's what excites me.
Yeah.
And so we're going to do it.
Yeah.
We're going to equip them and send them.
Yeah. As a parent of 3 youth-aged kids, teenagers, yes, like that is, like that's the heart, right? That they are being poured into, not just for the sake of being poured into. I mean, that's important, but but they're being equipped to go. And they feel empowered to simply, or to not simply just be present.
Right.
They feel empowered to be a part of this thing that God's doing. So yeah,
and
super. Go ahead.
I feel like that's somewhat unique when someone like a pastor is called specifically to students ministry. And I've been doing this for a while. I'm in my 19th year of doing it. And as I've gone through that and as I've done that, this is what I want to do, right? I want to equip and send. And I've seen so many young people go to college and lead their friends to faith, bring them back to the church and baptize them through the years. And these are young people that can go and do that. Mm-hmm. And so it's not like I'm just like charging you up saying we have amazing students. This is factually true. I've watched it for a long time. Mm-hmm. They're ready. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Service itself was phenomenal, from top to bottom. It was loud and it was energetic.
Yes.
And there were choreographed, at least to some extent, on moves on the
Yes.
the stage, which was so much fun.
Yes.
Seeing the group of students sitting in front and center, which I hope that becomes a weekly thing.
Yep.
I loved it. It was awesome. God did amazing things from start of the service to the very end. But let's talk specifically about your sermon.
Oh man, yeah.
It's not easy. It's not easy to get up and you're probably more accustomed to it than I am with your job with Youth for Christ, moving around. But new stage, new environment, new people. Like it was amazing. Like I was so just excited and it was just awesome. It was awesome.
Yeah, I definitely felt that a little bit. One of the things that no one would ever know unless I shared it is I need a screen protector on my iPad.
Yeah.
The moment I got up there, I couldn't see a thing on it. A glare. Mm-hmm. And so I was thankful I took my paper notes up there.
Yep.
Because otherwise I would have had nothing.
Yeah.
Right. And so just little things like that you get used to. Mm-hmm. But so that one was definitely one of those types of moments. But
figure it out.
And then, also, although traveling around, I do get to speak, and I do speak at a lot of churches. It's different to be at home. Mm-hmm. I got a passion for what's happening at New Hope, and so I want the people to, genuinely fall in love with Jesus when I'm speaking.
Yeah,
and I want that for everybody, but home's different.
Yeah.
Home's different. These are not only people that love Jesus, but these are people I serve beside.
Yeah,
and I really want to. I think when I pray and when I think about New Hope, I really want it to be the place where everyone belongs. Mm-hmm. I really want it to be the place where it doesn't really matter your story. You can encounter Jesus here. And so when I say those things out loud, it has an emotion to it.
Yeah. Yep.
So
yeah, and that definitely came across in both the 9 and the 11 o'clock service. Like it was 9:30 and 11 o'clock service. So it was awesome. So I took lots of notes yesterday. Which I love. I don't get the opportunity to sit and just be poured into. And so I was having a blast just processing what you were what you were giving us. And so one of the things that I thought, and this was towards the end of the message, so we'll start here and we'll work our way back, because I think this is where you were going. But you said you had three words: lost, confused, or dead. And you said, if you're lost, Jesus is the way. If you're confused, Jesus is the truth. If you're dead, Jesus is the life. And your whole sermon was around just communicating not just, who Jesus was, but that because Jesus was this, and then you explained how he was the way, not a way, and how he was the truth, not a truth, and how he was life, not a life. And so talk a little bit more about that, like what led you to this sermon, and then we can just kind of go from there.
Yeah, I think the big thing when I'm praying for the message, right? I got a few weeks to lead up to it because I know I'm coming and I get one message, right? So I have a few weeks. And as I was praying, I came across a psalm where it says that God sits on his throne and the earth is his footstool. And then it starts talking about all these attributes about him. One of the things is that he's girded with these things. Like these attributes are his person. And it led me to start thinking about, well, who is Jesus then? And it got brought to this verse. This is who he says that he is. And when he's talking to his disciples in John 14, 1 through 6, he's basically telling them that if you know who I am, you would know what this means. And he's claiming to be God. And I think that in these moments when it's who he is, it's not just what he did. It goes beyond just us being able to mimic what he did. We have to start experiencing him. And I think that's the heart behind the message for me. That if people could encounter him and experience him, they would know that he is this stuff. And that's like the passion behind it for me. And so then when he says, I am the life, you can know as a believer, specifically first, that encouragement of, I can't get life anywhere else. This is where it flows from. And we could do a big study on the fact of living water and all the things that Jesus is, on how life flows from him. But I think that's the passion behind it. Like, this is not activity that Jesus lived out. This was not Jesus' obedience. This is his personhood. And I think it's important for us to know that.
So knowing what we know about who Jesus is and the impact that he's had on our lives, why do you think it's so difficult for people to step into not only the relationship, but go fully committed, right? Where they are diving into that relationship and seeking it for all it's worth, not just being a Christian by name or by convenience. Why is it so hard for people to do that?
I see, as we share the gospel with a lot of young people, right? I see kind of two things that holds people back. Number one is they automatically think they don't belong or they're too far gone.
Okay.
So they won't even consider. That's one side of it. And I think that's the one we feel like we're most common with, or we see the most common. But then I also see the people that are so comfortable with the fact that they already know who Jesus is and what he did, they make no further consideration.
What do you mean?
So they've been in church maybe they've been in church for a long time, or they experienced a lot of church. They already decided Jesus is a good person who taught a long time ago, and it has no effect on me.
Okay.
And so they've both sides close themselves off to understanding that right now, when you and I are talking, the Holy Spirit is working and he's trying to do something. And once you kind of submit to that and relent to that, the walls come down, the tears come, the emotions come of like, wow, I'm experiencing God. But genuinely, I think the biggest holdup is we have decided that we're not going to experience God on one side or the other. Like that must be for somebody else and not for me, and for whatever reasons. And I think that holds people back, which is I already decided that God is this and this is all he's ever going to do. Or I've decided I can't meet with God because I'm not good enough and I'll never be good enough. He wouldn't want to know who I am. And that's why as a church or as people who go and share the gospel, which is all of us, when we talk with people, we shouldn't worry so much about what sin we need to point out to them. We should worry about being prayed up and ready to invite people into that relationship. Like, come and see, right? We talked a lot about that.
Yep.
Come and see who Jesus actually is and then see what happens. And I don't think they're really given the chance. And I think mostly it's just, I already know what I believe about that. And that could be negative or positive. I think that's holding people back. We try to break those walls down, especially like well, you think you know that about Jesus, but let me introduce you to who Jesus actually is. Or that's not how God does this. This isn't a get cleaned up and come to it game.
Yeah.
This is everybody has an invitation to the table game. And once you get to the table, then he talks to you about that stuff. That's what I've experienced. The more times we can make room for the Holy Spirit to move in people's lives and invite those into those situations, those walls start getting broken down. Because the Holy Spirit's really good at his job. Mm-hmm. We don't have to do that for people. And so if we can preach like we do here, we preach the gospel at New Hope. People are going to respond over time because you can't encounter Jesus that many times without something happening. Yeah, that's a long answer.
That's good.
But I'm passionate about that because we get mixed up. We feel like we got to have apologetics or the right answers.
Yeah.
And really, if you pray and you make room for the Holy Spirit, he'll do a lot of that. And I think that's what you did with the last series. That's why so many people encountered God during it.
Yeah.
Because you didn't have the answers.
I had no answers.
Right?
Yeah.
And yeah.
So we're actually going to, this sermon was good. It was well timed. So we're actually going to spend a significant amount of time in the book of John over the course of the next couple of months. And so I have been the last few weeks just processing and studying John chapter 1, right? 1 through 18. It's that prologue where we get so much information about the person and deity of Christ.
Yeah.
And so this was good. Like when you were talking about just all of the things that Jesus is. One of the things that stood out to me also yesterday was you mentioned that Jesus isn't just presenting the truth, he is the truth. Mm-hmm. Okay. What's the difference there? Like how do you delineate the two? Like how do you why is that so important to the gospel?
Well, something can be really true. Like we can both go and say that game that Kentucky played was amazing. Right.
I don't know what that sentence means.
Right.
Sorry.
As a Kentucky
I need
fan,
a different example.
Okay.
I'm joking.
The way that the Eagles played during the Super Bowl.
I totally understand that. Oh, can I pause you for a second?
Yeah.
I think I upset some people yesterday.
Oh, with the jersey?
Yeah. Like I felt some real tension with people that I love and who I believe love me. There was real tension there, and I kind of feel bad for it because I had no skin in the game. Right. I was a bandwagon casual observer of the game. Like we watched the game together. I didn't yell. Good. I didn't holler. I mean, there were some moments of frustration, but that was out of the sheer fact that it was such a dumb game.
It was, yeah.
Like, so if you were watching this and my Chiefs jersey offended you, I am sorry, genuinely sorry. So please.
I feel like it was great because I think people didn't know.
Yeah.
And it made me happy.
People were taken back.
And people were taken back.
Anyway.
There's some Chiefs fans in the crowd, though, that needed it. So good encouragement.
I took some pictures with some people in my jersey because of it. But there were definitely more looks like almost questioning their church of choice. Like I felt like some people may be looking online other churches' websites today because I wore a Chiefs jersey. So
all you have to say is I like to be on the winning team. Jesus's and the Chiefs.
No,
either way.
Turn out yesterday.
But
I will.
Secondarily,
yeah,
the students' jerseys were awesome.
They were amazing.
That was such a cool thing.
Yeah, and honestly, you don't want me to wear a Chiefs jersey. You should have got me a New Hope jersey.
Yeah,
So it's not really my fault.
It isn't.
Okay. All right, Jesus.
Yes.
Difference between the truth and you're using an example of the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean things can be factually true, but have no power. And I think that's the difference. So when we hear people encountering Jesus in the New Testament, when we read those stories, they're encountering something you can't encounter other places.
Okay.
Which is and this is how my mind thinks about it, which is a reset back to the way things were intended in the garden.
Okay.
And so he's doing all these miracles. He's going and ministering to people and teaching them, you've heard it said, but I say this. Mm-hmm. He's resetting people's minds back to things of God's intent. And so when he is the truth, he doesn't go out and just do a teaching. He is setting things in alignment with the Father. And so when he does that, there's no arguing against it. You can say, I don't like that. Or you can say, that's not how I think about it. But there's no saying that he's wrong. Mm-hmm. And that's why they killed him. because in the end, they couldn't prove him wrong. They tried to trap him and catch him. And the difference between being the truth and like knowing what's true is the ability to be true every single time. That's how it speaks to me. And so he cannot speak and be wrong, and because he is God. And so when he speaks, the truth is simply coming out of him because he dictates what truth is. And so that's, to me, the difference. I might be able to teach you something, or you might be able to teach me something that Jesus said, but we don't get to decide whether that's true or not or accurate. But when you're the creator, God, when you're there, and I believe anyways, and I think we do denominationally and everything like that, that the Godhead, the Trinity, is at creation. And so when Jesus is part of creation, then what he says is accurate every single time. So that's the difference between as a being the truth and like knowing and speaking truth. I can speak truth, but I can't be truth. I can't decide next week that I'm going to say, hey, the greatest team all time is the Chicago Bears, and now that becomes a truth that lasts forever and no one can ever speak against. But if Jesus declared that, we now have to believe that. And that's the difference to me. Like what he declares is actually and becomes truth.
His words are the manifestation of truth because because of who he is.
Because of who he is. Yeah. And that's totally different. And I think we see people reacting to that in the New Testament. Like, who in the world is this? Who can say to the storm, oh, stop it? And it just does. Who can go and say, hey, yeah, you've been bleeding for this many years, but now you aren't. And we see the centurion come to him and be like, actually, you don't have to go to my house. You can just say that it's so, and everything will listen to you. He understood what Jesus, when Jesus declares thing, it just is. And I think that's the thing that stands out. And once you start to recognize that in your life, and then you spend time with him, it actively transforms you. You start to think differently. Your mind is renewed simply by what he declares and what he says is true. And when you start experiencing that, it is overwhelming to you. And I think that's the difference. And yeah, when you submit to that in your life, it's really humbling. Like right now I'm a little choked up by it, because then think about this. We go through the mental health things we just talked about, but now Jesus declares something about you. Tells you who you are. When he starts to do that, you're not allowed to think those things about yourself anymore. You might still think them, but then you say, that's not who I am.
Right.
And so if we really want to be overcomers, we have to believe that, we have to trust in the fact that he is who he says he is, which is the truth. Then we start to overcome. Because I'm not an addict and I don't identify as that. I'm not a failure. I don't identify as that.
So you did a really good job yesterday talking about using the title of the Super Bowl and everyone looking for a hero or a leader. And one of the things that Taylin said at the beginning, which that was really cool too, bringing him up and letting him be a part of that.
Yeah.
God's got big things in store for that young man. But he said, I believe it was him that said, at some point, everyone has to make a choice to follow something or someone. Talk about that, because I think that is a deep, and maybe we don't have time to go into it, but even the absence of a choice in Jesus, you're making a choice to follow something else, right?
Yeah.
Why is that so foundational and so important, especially when we talk about our students and kind of the obstacles that they're up against?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think that the biggest piece of that for me is naturally created wise. We were created to follow. So we're always going to have something we're looking to provide something for us that we're currently missing.
Okay.
And so when we recognize what that is that we're currently missing, and that could be identity, that could be just the emotion of feeling important. There could be a lot of things that we're looking for that we feel like we're missing. We especially encounter that with students when it comes to relationships with their parents, relationships with their peers, when they don't have community, they run into where they're lost and they look for something to fulfill that, right? And we can say lots of ways that they go and do that, but they're going to follow something. And so whatever they think is going to help them get to where they want to go, they'll start following that. So if that's LeBron James and they want to be an athlete and they want to be a great athlete, they'll start doing what LeBron does or buying his shoes or wearing his clothes. Like those are the things that we encounter students doing. And so why do I, when Talon says that, when everybody's going to find somebody to follow eventually, just who is that going to be? That is at one level. They're looking up to people. They want to be like them, and they're going to choose to follow them because of what they're looking to do in their life or what they're looking to have. But secondarily, I think it was Jim Carrey, the actor, who said he wishes that everyone could get everything they ever wanted because they'd realize it's not worth anything. Mm-hmm. I think there is a time, even if we've been a little successful, we've made some money or we have some things, we've gotten somewhere, we start to realize this stuff can't satisfy what I'm looking for. And I think as people get on in their lives, even towards the last, they realize, I don't know if this really mattered. And so in the end, even greatness requires something to be greater. And that's really Jesus. Like you don't get to where you want to get even by winning the Super Bowl. You don't get to where you want to get even by becoming an executive. Mm-hmm. It still falls short of what you had in mind. You walk that stage to get your college degree, right?
Yep.
And you do all that work for all those years. They hand you the paper and you're like, oh, what did that actually do?
Yep.
That's the kind of thing where that's why I wanted to make sure to say so much is like, life will never do any of this. And we know that's accurate when we start living it.
So how do we stay content in Jesus then? Oof. Because that's what you're saying, right? He is the thing that we need, the only thing that we need. How do we stay content in that relationship to where we're not, looking for other things?
Right. Oh man, is that like the crux of sin?
We'll talk about that. What do you mean?
I think that's where the struggle lands, which is we all have things we still struggle with, even if we've been living for Jesus for a while. Mm-hmm. And I think that comes from when we think we need something that he's not giving us or providing for us. Okay. We go and look for it ourselves. How do we find contentment? It's not a profound answer, but I think it is found in that commitment to obedience, like that getting up every day and understanding the gospel, I didn't deserve what God's been giving to me, so I'm going to live my life for him. Mm-hmm. And then as I experience that, I find the fulfillment that I need, so I stop chasing. But the moment I'm not connected with Jesus, we talked a little bit a while ago, and this has been a while ago now, but you talked about the branches and the vine and staying connected. When you start to disconnect, mm-hmm. you'll immediately pursue whatever you want and whatever you're lacking, because as soon as you disconnect, you'll start to lack, right? And so that obedience... And I say obedience, I'm not talking about not murdering people, stuff like that. I'm talking about getting up and leaning towards God and looking to him and saying, I don't want to live today without living it for you. That's the kind of obedience I'm talking about. Okay. And so when you're doing that and you're staying connected to the vine, I think you have less of those opportunities and do less of those things. But as soon as you disconnect, you're going to see need and you're going to pursue that. Mm-hmm. Whether that's going shopping or, a relationship you shouldn't be having or all kinds of things. Because the gap that Jesus isn't filling, you're going to try to fill with something. So I think as believers specifically, not spending time to God, not getting to church, not going to small group, not being in community, all of those things are going to make room where you're going to want to fill it with something. And I think that's where we have a tendency to not pursue Jesus, but we pursue what we want instead. We still want to sin. We're still battling the way the Apostle Paul said. The Greek is more there's an unwelcome visitor that lives inside me that I wish I could kick out of this house, but he's still here to distract me and make me pursue things I don't want to. And it's in competition with the Holy Spirit. You have to spend enough time with God and be patient enough to lean into the Word and reading the Bible. Or the natural man, the flesh will be what you follow. I tell students this. How long did you practice living for whatever you wanted? Every single day, you naturally get up and do that. So if you've practiced that for myself, I never had a thought about living for God until I was after 23 years old. For 23 years, I practiced doing it my own way, which is being an enemy of God and not following his way. And so if I've practiced it for 23 years, how long am I going to have to practice to overcome that?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we have a natural tendency towards just wanting to pursue whatever we want.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to put into practice the activities that it's going to take to replace that. And I don't think we are mindful of that. So if we have a tendency towards hiding away and secluding ourselves when we're having a hard time, we have to then instead, I have to go get into community in the church. If we have a tendency towards, pornography or some kind of sin that's in the dark,
right,
we have to go and then bring it to the light. You have to say, hey man, I'm struggling with this.
Yep.
Will you check on me? We have to do the opposite of what's natural to overcome those things. That's when we experience Jesus actively moving. But it's not easy. I mean, this is an every single day fight.
Mm-hmm.
And
which is why Jesus said, pick up your cross daily and follow me.
So when you ask the question, I'm like, man, I wish I could get that right.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to quite literally let the old man die at my baptism and remind myself that that's not who I am anymore. But that takes every single day looking in the mirror and the gospel is applied to me right now today.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise I can't make it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I do think the enemy's trying to destroy me.
Well, and that's when I ask the question, why do people, how do people disengage? That's the first thing that comes to mind, right? Well, Satan's the deceiver.
Yeah.
He's going to tell you that you need something else. If you're not content in your relationship with God, if with your walk with Christ, well, then he's going to whisper lies into your ears until you go, like you said, fill the void with something else. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that Jesus desires from us the most, is that relationship to continue to grow and develop, stronger today than it was yesterday, stronger tomorrow than it was today. Mm-hmm. And some days that's really, really easy. Some days that's really difficult. Right. It's a challenging thing to do.
We know the truth that Jesus said to us, you have everything you need. Mm-hmm. And he will remind us of that if we pray. But the enemy says, God's holding back from you. Mm-hmm. And those two ideas fighting each other is the battle.
Yeah.
I wish that it wasn't.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay.
This isn't for the lighthearted to be a Christian.
No.
Better
is rarely easier.
Right.
I think one of the disservices the church has done, and this is, I think, a part of that kind of evangelical, and it's the Billy Graham movement, right? And I love it. I'm not, please, if you're hearing this, don't misunderstand. I went to a Billy Graham crusade when I was younger.
Nice.
His ministry changed millions and millions of people. Right. But when all you preach or all you hear, and I don't believe he designed it this way. His hope was that you hear the gospel and you get plugged in.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. But when all you hear is, just come down, say a prayer, we're going to be playing Just As I Am, and then you're going to be saved, and we stop there, we miss, I think we miss the fruit, but we there is a, the next part of that is oftentimes the most challenging. When you mentioned letting the old man die, that is a very, very difficult thing to do, and something that we are all battling all the time. This journey of sanctification,
right.
Becoming more Christ-like. And you're right, it's not for the faint-hearted.
No.
But it's better.
It's better.
Not easier, but better. Better. So, how did I do as a host? Did I
great.
handle it? Okay.
Yes, you should definitely do this again.
Yeah.
Maybe get Hattie and interview her.
Oh.
I'm trying to get Hattie to be on here more.
Yeah. Hattie adds a ton of value to everything that she does, for sure. Yeah. So, so that's it for this episode 183 of the Grow Podcast. I have blacked out on how you typically end these things, but thanks for joining us. Tune in next week. We have a one-off sermon that I'm very excited about. And if you here's the promise: if you come or you listen, you will have walked away reading an entire book of the Bible.
Amazing.
Right? Like, why would you not want? You could walk in
You
and say,
need to
"Hey,
do that.
like I've read a book of the Bible
Right.
after Sunday. Like it's going to be amazing. It's going to be good. God's got cool things in store." Man, thanks for all you're doing with our students. Thanks for being
Yes.
part of this amazing team and this church. Like, I just am so happy that you were here. And so we will see you next time.